Just unmuting myself. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Julie, and thanks also, Katrina. Terrific to see some of the information you were presenting there, because it actually fits hand in glove with some of the information that I'm about to share with you now. Hope everyone's had a good day so far. The title says it all, that we're about to share some results from an empirical assessment that actually shines a light on how awesome our industry is. That's not to dismiss the fact that there are always room, there's always room for improvement, but we're also pretty awesome. So my wife Abby and I have worked within the care industry for about 20 years. We actually founded Verizon in 2010. So together with our team, we've run leadership programs with some of the industry's largest providers for about the last 15 years straight. So our background is in psychology and also business performance. What we're passionate about is to contribute to the overall success of our care industry. Just having an issue with this slide. There we go. So current perceptions, there's been a lot of negative press around over the last particularly half a dozen years. Obviously the Royal Commission, etc. So what we've noticed is that the media's representation of our industry has become quite negative, and that's actually having a detrimental effect in a number of ways. So attracting staff, retaining staff, leaders, even things like morale and increased compliance pressures and funding issues and a whole heap of things. So we believed that this actually isn't the whole truth. We believed that in actual fact, the way that the media is representing our industry was somewhat unfair and also unbalanced. So that's actually why we started Datadrivesinsight.com. It's to address this situation by providing empirical facts about our industry. And that we could then use these facts to help our industry in a number of important ways. So in world record time, and using a medium that I'm not very comfortable with, much rather be with you all in person, I'm going to share a snippet of what we've discovered so far. So many of you are probably familiar with the Net Promoter Score. You can see the formula up there in the top right-hand side of your slide. The Net Promoter Score is widely used and it creates a score of between negative 100 and positive 100. So you have to be pretty much a raving fan in that 9 or 10 range to be counted as a promoter. A couple of neutral ones in yellow there. So if someone answers a 7 or 8 as to whether they'd recommend your services to their family and friends. And then anything 6 and below gets counted as a detractor. So you can see how you could actually have a negative 100 score, or you could also, it's possible, have a positive 100 score. Let's look at a few industries. So the energy industry has, on average, a Net Promoter Score of negative 14. The financial services, coming up to the end of financial year, many of us will be engaging with these folks. They have a Net Promoter Score of negative 2. Real estate is positive 4, may surprise some of you. Retail, who are there to delight us and win our business, they're there at positive 15. And then right up there's charities. So charities have a very high Net Promoter Score, as you would probably expect, of plus 27. So drum roll, where do you think the aged care sector is? Plus 44. Now that is pretty cool. We're obviously doing something well. You wouldn't necessarily know it from the way that we're talked about, especially in the mainstream press. So the significant opportunity for us is to find out what is going so well. What are we already doing that's working? And then how do we grow that and spread some of those positive ingredients across the whole of the sector? And also, what are some of the things that we're doing that we could do actually even a little bit better? So using our proposition is that by collecting empirical data like this, we can actually use that compassionately to help the whole of the industry be more successful. So a balanced perspective is key. There's a question here. Just think for a moment about the benefits of having access to a valid and reliable picture of our industry. What would some of the benefits actually be? There's too many to mention, but here's a couple. It could lift our whole industry's morale. I'm hoping that the 150 or so people that are watching this webinar just felt a little bit of pride there when the trophy gets lifted and you go, wow, charities are plus 27, our sector plus 44 Net Promoter Score. I think if we shared that with most of the people in our industry, they'll also feel that little lift that's so important because of the work we do. It can also help with attracting and retaining quality leaders, as well as something we've talked a lot about. How do we appeal to the next generation of workforce? Well, if they know they're working in an organisation and a sector that has a Net Promoter Score that's even higher than charities, well, maybe that's going to help us with that. Attracting consumers and residents. I'm going to show you a case study in a minute, and when some of those factors come forward and you're actually able to share them with potential consumers or residents, it's going to go a long way to helping people want to actually do more business with us as a whole sector. So there's a case study that we're going to go through and look at a few things that we measured. So I'll talk a bit more about the tools that we used in a moment. This particular case study showed some pretty incredible results, and that's what I want to share with you. What did we measure? Well, care capability across 6 domains, all linked to the quality care standards. Feedback from consumers and family members around satisfaction and NPS. So as Katrina was just saying, I think it was the #1 point, getting empirical feedback from consumers. Now, what we did is consumers and also their family members. So it's a neutral third party or group that actually analyzes that data. That's absolutely key. So also we measured staff engagement and culture, and we looked at how awesome this particular organisation is. Ready for another drum roll? You should be prepared now. Here we go. If you're my vintage, you'll remember Animal pretty well. So this particular group, one of the largest residential care providers, lots and lots of sites. Boom. Net Promoter Score of plus 70. Now that's pretty unheard of, you know, in any sector. With us having an average of 44, which we ought to be celebrating, this particular organisation, Net Promoter Score across the whole organisation, I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive in a second, but their Net Promoter Score is 70. So what the heck was going so good that we can learn from and spread across the whole industry? So a couple of headline results. Their employee culture score, 7.4 out of 10. The employee engagement score, now keeping in mind they have quite substantially more than 700 employees, or FTE I should say. Engagement score of 76%. But check that out, that's something, when I shared these results with the executive, you couldn't wipe the smile off their face, right? Because they were pretty nervous sitting there going, we know that there's been an external provider do a valid, reliable assessment of not only our residents, but the residents' family members. What are they actually going to say about their satisfaction with the quality of care that we actually delivered? So I'm pretty nervous about it. When we were able to say the average score was 9 out of 10, they're very, very pleased, let's just say. And then we've already said the the Net Promoter Score is 70, plus 70. So let's have a bit of a quick chat about the tools that we use. Some of you may have, well, many of you have probably heard of SILCA already. SILCA measures leadership capability, and participants are provided with a very comprehensive self-development guide. Again, it's a valid, reliable instrument that is actually, I think one of your other points, Katrina, was linking it to the clinical standards. So all of the items in the tool are actually correlated to the new quality standards and the clinical guidelines, and etc. SISCA is more about measuring teams and measuring services or facilities. So in the case study I'm talking about, there was 15 plus facilities, and we were able to then rank them from lowest performing to highest performing and have a look at some of these outcomes. Which ones had the higher quality care, which ones had improved compliance and safety performance, which ones were more financially sustainable, and which ones had higher employee engagement, because those factors are the ones that lead to the higher Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction or consumer satisfaction. So some of the strengths, now that's on the right-hand side, you'll see that picture there. That is a verbatim quote from the data. So because we also included some qualitative data, we actually got stacks and stacks of these absolutely beautiful, what turns out to be testimonials. And that's one that I particularly like. If I had known it was this good, I would have moved in sooner. And how cool is that? So strengths you can start to see around safe and comfortable. Consumers were feeling that they were safe and comfortable, particularly during COVID. This was actually COVID-19. This was actually, the data was collected during COVID. And the feeling safe and comfortable results were off the chart. So that's a real credit to this particular organisation. I won't go through all of those factors there because we're just short on time. But I want to share a couple of other things. So what you can see here is, as I mentioned, you can line up the teams or the facilities from lowest performing to highest performing. So the ones on the left, that's the higher performing team, and I'll just explain how it works. So that circle that you can see, that the colour in the middle is what all of the people are saying that team currently perform at, right? The orangey colour, which is closer to the outer rim, that's the score that all of those people who are giving feedback want to actually see that particular team or facility improve within 12 months. Okay, so you can see one, which is values client safety. It's the highest you can get and they want it to be that way. There's some other things around communicating effectively that you can see actually people want that group to work on that a little bit. So on the other side, so on your right-hand side of the screen, you can see there's big gaps. Now that's the lower performing team. So that's the group that we want to now compare. So here's the sort of real takeaway for you. In the higher performing teams, they had an 81% employee engagement. In the lower performing teams, they had a 66% employee engagement. So what that means is that's a 23% higher engagement in the higher performing team than the lower performing team. And what did that translate to, right? And that's really key. So I know, Katrina, you mentioned engagement as well. Well, what it translates to with consumers is that NPS for the higher performing teams, 84% versus only 51%. So what is that? That's a 68% difference between the lower performing teams and the higher performing teams on consumer experience of this quality of care that they're getting. Now, that's all well and good, but what do we really want to know? We really want to know what is the difference between the low ones to the high ones. So there were three key factors. First, managing team conflict. In the lower performing ones, that was an issue. Creating a positive team dynamic, which flowed on, that was an issue. And then staff wellbeing, that was an issue. Clear example, when we dived into that data, I'll give you one example of how this worked. When a facility in the lower performing range, when they had staff, when they were short on staff, the leaders, so using Silka, we could find out the leaders' style was much more about transactional task focused. So they would still have the view, no, our commitment is to have residents showered by 9 a.m. Even though we're 3 staff short, that's our commitment. That's what great looks like. And so, of course, people would rush. People would feel there'd be more conflict because people felt like each other aren't pulling their weight, etc., etc. And so their well-being went down, conflicts arose, and the team dynamic reduced. Leaders in the higher performing teams were adaptive, or they were people and task focused. So what they were saying is, hang on, we're 3 staff short, we can't get agency for one reason or another. Let's actually engage with our residents and see Do they actually want to shower by 9 a.m? And just deal with the issue case by case. So we're able to see with the combination of data, and there's many other practical examples of that, which this organisation gets access to then say, well, if we can bring those lower performing organisations, which we now know why they are, facilities, we now know why they are, and we can bring them into the middle or even the higher performing ends, what difference is that going to make to our overall organisation? So on the next slide, what we've got here is overall leadership impact on performance. So I'm not sure how easy that is for you to read, but again, just like Katrina, if you want these slides, you can, I'm sure, get them off Julie or Sky or us directly. I'm happy to share them. So you can see the one that stands out for me is, let's go through this quickly, 56% difference between the lower performing sites and the higher performing sites in, I feel included in discussions to resolve issues. That's what, one of the things that's saying is the workforce is saying, we actually know and have a significant insight into how to make things better for us and how to provide better quality care for our residents. I just need you to listen to me and have leaders to really include people. So you can start, I feel safety and well-being is a priority. I feel supported to share my ideas and concerns. Just imagine if you've now got a facility where people are 33% more likely to say, yeah, I feel supported to share my ideas on how to make this place better, versus I can't be bothered sharing because I doubt that they're going to be listened to. And then the last thing is I feel valued. Now we know what impact that has, these sort of sub-domains to feeling engaged and then delivering that level of care. So I've only got a couple more things to go through, and then I'm sure we'll get to some questions. Benefits, there's a heck of a lot to go through, but there's organisational benefits. We've already talked about those. You get to see what levers you can pull to help the lower performing or even good facilities become great facilities. Marketing, you might see that's an interesting one, because people are saying, I can actually use this information to attract great quality staff and also some consumers, and reassure our consumers that they're in a great facility. Obviously, there's some compliance and audit benefits, because there's, as Katrina said, independent assessment data. It's actually specifically created for the care industry. I think that makes it a first. It's cost effective and easy to complete. So you can check it out on the website, but basically it's around about an 8-minute thing on your smartphone, 8-minute survey. It's usually the cost is something like a third of just a standard staff satisfaction survey. Yet you get staff satisfaction, engagement, and all the other stuff that I've just talked about. So yeah, because it's an empirical test, it actually enables test and retest yearly, and you get to measure progress. Now that's really important, and we're in the middle of chatting with UTS about. They're very excited about how to use some of this data to help benchmark for our industry and also create industry-wide trends and themes, so that with ACSA, working with ACSA, we can help shape and influence the whole industry. And that would be groups, with groups like yours, Katrina, and others. So, last couple of things. Our absolute commitment is to analyse industry-wide data with our industry partner, UTS, work with ACSA, shape the entire industry's performance. So when you choose CISCA and SILCA, it's not only good for your organisation, it's great for the sector, because together we can provide an accurate view of our industry, and this data can help us to be more successful. It goes without saying, which is why I haven't shared the particular organisation's name, that the data is confidential to the organisation, but the collective data is what we're interested in as an industry. Last point to get started is, so you can go to datadrivesinsight.com, make an inquiry, we'll get back to you. If you're a little old school like me, give me a call or a text or an email. We're Australia-wide, metro and regional, and we have people set up across Australia, but we're also set up for virtual delivery. And yeah, thanks for your time. Really looking forward to meeting meeting all of you and seeing how we can be of assistance. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Ash.